Teste 1, 2. Boa tarde a todos. Teste.
Já estou aqui há 3 dias, não é? Sim. Sim.
Estou a guardar cá coisas. Cabo, não sei o que, os sons vai ser só daqui.
Tratado as
Cá,
coisas.
depois andava de lá para o outro, deixo cá, não sei o que, está a guardar tudo para sair.
Eu gostava de fazer qualquer coisa nesse sentido.
Foi o único dia que nós
Ela vai falar comigo com mais calma. Não é muito grande.
Teste 1, 2.
Está grande. É para chegar ali mais 15 minutos da porta.
Mas tu já foste para lá, para o plenário?
Ainda não. Ainda não.
Estás a vir a outro mundo que
Acho
está
que
lá.
nunca vou. Acho que nunca irei ao plenário.
Gostava de ver ser um cenário.
Antes vais connosco, nós vamos para lá depois imitar.
Ok. Depois eu não sei o que é que vou fazer a seguir.
Fazer uns dias inteirinhos aqui, uns dias inteirinhos.
Teste.
ouvir porque ele estou a ouvir aqui. Mas eles vão ao púlpito. Cada um deles vai ao púlpito, está bem?
Tem de carregar. Podes metê-los já a ouvir.
Mas sabe pessoas que falam inglês?
As televisões, eu não sei quem é portuguesa, não sei se já está a falar inglês. Essas coisas, não sei.
Esse foi Good afternoon. Everybody has headphones, please. Let's start. Welcome to the Portuguese Pavilion Open Ceremony. To open this session, I would like to call the Chargé d'Affaires, Mr. Mário Martins, the Chargé d'Affaires of the Portuguese mission in Baku. Thank you.
Boa tarde. Boa tarde, good afternoon. I am the new head of the Portuguese diplomatic mission in Baku. I just arrived 2 months ago. Welcome. I welcome the minister and all the colleagues to Baku. And I would like to take the opportunity to wish our colleagues from Azerbaijan success for the endeavor, which is to organize to have the presidency of COP29. And it's always dangerous to give the microphone to a diplomat, but I promise that I will give you some ideas just to about the relationship, the bilateral relationship between Portugal and Azerbaijan. We established diplomatic relations in 1992, and since then we have a good relationship, but I would say a modest relationship. So I think from after 2 months in Baku and from Baku, I see a lot of potential between Portugal and Azerbaijan, and I hope that we will manage to take advantage of this potential. There is a new dynamic now in the bilateral relation. There is a will in Portugal to reinforce the relationship, and there is a will in Baku to reinforce this relationship. In my meetings with Azeri colleagues, and since we are in COP, that's what I would like to highlight, I listened to two ideas: renewables and water management. And I think Portugal has a lot to bring to Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan has a lot to learn with Portugal in these two areas. So I hope that this Portuguese pavilion in the next 2 weeks could be a hub, a meeting point between Azerbaijan and Portugal, and you can count the minister, the Portuguese business people, even our colleagues from CPLP can count with the commitment, my personal commitment as Chargé d'Affaires here in Baku, and with the mission that we have here in Baku. And I just, to conclude, would like to mention two faits divers. We have an honorary consul here in Baku, which is Mr. Murat. He must be somewhere there. And I really want to thank him for helping us to organize and to put in place the pavilion. And we have a lady called Sadet. Sadet, I met her when I arrived here 2 months ago. And I met her through Instagram because I discovered that she was cooking, making and selling pastéis de nata in Azerbaijan. So I met her and I wanted to understand her story. So she fell in love with Portugal. She goes very often to Portugal, and she's a kind of an annex of the diplomatic mission of Portugal here, because she promotes our gastronomy through the pastéis de nata that you will be tasting tonight or this afternoon. So thank you very much for being here, and I would like to pass now to Jorge. Thank you so much.
I was hesitating about speaking in Portuguese or in English, but I will try to do maybe a mix. Well, dear Minister, dear Mário Martins, dear guests, it's a pleasure to be with you today. As you know, UNOPS, which is the agency that I lead, is the UN Agency for Operations. We do not work on policy or strategy. We just get things done on the ground, especially serving those most in need. There is a climate crisis, but I think it's also important that we do not overlook the circumstance that we are dealing not with one crisis, but with three crises. A climate crisis, a poverty and inequality crisis, and a conflict and fragility crisis. And therefore, at this COP, we shall not measure success just on the outcomes on climate, but also on the way that the climate outcomes contribute to peace and to development. I've been attending almost all COPs since '99, and things have changed a lot. For many, many years, the issue was about science. Today, there is no dispute about science. For many years, the issue was the economics. Is it profitable? Is it cost efficient to address climate change at the same time generating jobs and growth? Today, this is indisputable. We know that going green generates jobs, generate prosperity, it's good for business. For many years, the issue was also about the dispute between us and them. Today we know that unless we cooperate and we contribute through a common approach, we will not overcome the issues on climate, because even if we go green, even if we decarbonize everything in the north, if we do not support the global south, we will not be able to address climate change. So what's the topic for this COP? This is not a COP about science, this is not a COP about tech, this is not about a COP about economics. All these issues are fixed. This is a COP on development. This is really the COP where the world needs to provide the finance that is needed to support those most in need. I work on development for many years, UNOPS, with our presence in more than 100 countries. We know that there is unfortunately a correlation between climate impacts and poverty, a correlation between fragility, conflict, and climate. Today, the 14 most affected countries by climate impacts are all living under conflict. And we also know that in the same places that are disproportionately affected by climate impacts, we are dealing with the hotspots of poverty and inequalities. So if we take an approach that is just about us and just about here, if we do not address the impacts that other countries are facing, regardless their level of emissions, we'll not be able to address climate through justice and fairness perspective. And the figures are very easy to address. Today, we are in a trajectory towards 2.6 to 2.8 degrees, not 1.5 degrees. The governments have agreed to be neutral by 2050, but to be neutral by 2050, we will need to reduce emissions by 42% by 2030. To reduce emissions by 42% by 2030, we would need to reduce emissions by 9% a year. Last year, emissions rose 1%. And the trajectory is 2.6 to 2.8 degrees, not 1.5. So what we want to get from this COP, and especially from the next COP in Belém do Pará, is to have all countries agreeing in new national determined contributions, new targets that put us in a trajectory to 1.5 and not 2.6 or 2.8. The second gap is a financing gap. Again, the figures are very easy to consider. To get the neutrality, to get 42% reduction by 2030, we need to mobilize $6 trillion per year on climate action, 2.4 for developing countries. Today, we have been talking about $100 billion mobilized to developing countries. This is obviously insufficient. So we need to ensure that through this COP, because this COP is all about finance, we need a target, a deal, not only on concessional finance, but also on private finance mobilized to climate action, going from the 100 billion that is obviously insufficient towards the trillions that are needed. And finally, and I will end with that, we need to commit on the capacity for implementation. In some context, you have the finance, you even have the policy, but we don't have the capacity for implementation. That's where UNOPS, my agency, is focused about, is unblocking the bottlenecks that undermine the capacity for implementation. So it's about policy, about finance, and about capacity for implementation. There is no room for hesitancy. It's urgent, it's possible, and it is profitable. If you just take a look into the energy sector, as the Minister Graça Carvalho knows well, this sector addresses both challenges and opportunities. In the last decade, we have doubled globally the investment on renewable energy. By 2030, 50% of all electricity will be green. In the last year, 1 out of 5 cars that have been sold were electrical cars. So we know that energy efficiency, renewable energy, energy storage, electrical mobility is in a growth trajectory. But the problem, again, is the south. Africa is home to 60% of the solar potential in the world, but only attracts 1% of investment. So obviously, going green must be compatibilized with more equality and fairness. So if you ask me what this COP is about, it's about fairness, about solidarity, about cooperation, and I'm very glad that in this room we have not only governments but also civil society and companies, because this is not an aspiration for the governments, it's an aspiration for all society. And again, I would like to thank Minister Graça Carvalho for this invitation. As you mentioned, for me it's very special to be in an event like this. I'm Portuguese, and I'm very honored to be part of the inauguration of this pavilion, and I wish you, dear Graça, the best of luck in this COP. We really need all politicians, all delegations from governments to converge not to the low-hanging fruit, but to the real aspiration, which is restoring the right to the future. Obrigado.
Thank you, Mr. Jorge Moreira da Silva. Now to close the session, I would like to call the Minister of Environment and Energy, Maria da Graça Carvalho.
Muito boa tarde. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sim. Caro Jorge Moreira da Silva, thank you very much. Muito obrigada por ter aceito o nosso convite. Mário Martins, senhor encarregado da missão de Portugal aqui em Baku, também muito obrigada. Senhor Ministro da Indústria e Energia de Cabo Verde, Senhora Ministra do Ambiente de São Tomé e Príncipe, caros amigos, ladies and gentlemen, it is both a great honor and a pleasure for me to open the Portuguese stand in this COP in Baku. I have attended several COPs in the past, including some decisive ones, like the Paris in 2015. Actually, I have started a long time ago. I started in the 2000 when Portugal was presidency, and I was one of the negotiators. And I think we met with George in that COP. And since there, many things, we have achieved many things, but also some disappointments in some of the COPs. Today, I stand before you as Minister for the Environment and Energy of the Portuguese Republic, because before I attend the COPs as member of the Parliament, advisor of the Portuguese government, or as European Commission advisor. So it's my first COP as a responsibility as minister on in this area. And I have the honor to say that I'm proud of the progress that my country has achieved in the road to green transition. We have a stable policy in this area that have been followed by different ministers. One of the ministers was Jorge Moreira da Silva, and I have to thank all the efforts that Portugal has done in this field, especially in the renewables and all the negotiation and preparing Portugal for facing the climate change issue. So, what is the Portuguese reality compared with in this area? And what we have done, we have taken office 7 months ago, and we have made several decisions to consolidate and strengthen the decarbonization of our economy. One of the novelties that we bring here is our National Energy and Climate Plan that was just approved by the Council of Ministers in October, where we have a very high ambition on renewables. We have the ambition of getting to 51% of the global energy to be from renewables in 2030 and 93% of the electricity production. So it's a very high, one of the highest in the that I'm aware in the countries. Portugal has also created a climate agency that will manage the funds. Was not the negotiations, because there we have the Agência Portuguesa para o Ambiente, APA, that is doing very well, but we really miss an agency to manage all the funds that we have related with energy, environment, water and climate change. So it's called the Climate Agency that we just have created, and it will manage, for example, Fundo Ambiental that sponsors the cooperation and the cooperation between Portugal and the developing countries in this area. We also have done a lot of work in the simplification of licensing. It's very important that when you want to promote the renewables, you don't have a complex that takes long process of licensing. You need to be strict on the environmental issues and taking consideration
the networks and working with people. So I think Portugal has a huge contribution to make, both to the bigger European market, but also in this local context and cities.
And do you think, not having yet the connections that we need, but do you think that Europe is today more protected or more from another big energy crisis? Because this is what we are talking about. If we have a connection between European Peninsula and the rest of Europe, all the renewables and they can help that scenario.
I think that's a really, really good point. The energy transition is obviously about the climate, as we see here, but it's also about energy security and it's about competitiveness. The energy crisis we have just been going through was driven by our import dependence of fossil fuels, and in particular fossil fuels from Russia. And our interconnectedness, the fact that we have a common electricity market, helped us avoid blackouts. The high levels of renewables, the investments into renewables, kept us secure through the crisis. But to give you an example of how important the interconnections are, at the peak of the crisis, you in Portugal faced a drought. There was simply not enough rain. You have a high share of hydropower in your electricity system, but that summer, at the peak of the crisis, when prices were very, very high, in addition to the other challenges, the drought, the climate impact on the energy system also made it even more challenging. And so you need the renewables, but the interconnections is a way of making use of the renewables wherever they can be generated at any given point in time. So really an important aspect, also for security, as you say.
And how do you see, more from an European point of view, because maybe in Portugal it's not a question because it's not good for our country, but what do you see given that there are no connections, the rise of nuclear in some countries, France for instance? Do you think that it's worrying, it's all part of the mix?
You want me to answer? Nuclear.
It's not for us. It's not
it's
for
not
Portugal.
For us.
You have said it. Yes, of course. For Portugal,
no
it's
dimension, no money, no conditions. In order to have nuclear, you need to have a dimension. you need to prepare with an authority for the nuclear supervision, for the safety. You need to have a generation of nuclear engineers that takes long to form. But nothing against the countries that want to do it and have dimension to do it and are stable, political stable, not a lot of earthquakes and that have done, because I believe that with the price that is necessary of the investment, it's not very easy for countries to start with a big investment of nuclear nowadays, as things are at the international level. So the ones that have conditions to use is their choice. For us, is not a solution. So is a decision of each member state, the energy mix. So we need to adapt to the conditions. We have renewables, we use renewables.
Okay. And at an European level, do you think that every energy has its place, especially after we see that Europe was so dependent on Russian gas?
I think the Minister, you have just very precisely described the European approach to nuclear, which is, yes, in Europe we are going to need nuclear in our energy system in order to become climate neutral by 2050. We have done the analysis how to get there. But as you're also saying, not necessarily every country. For some countries it makes sense. If you have nuclear, it makes sense to make the investments to extend the lifetime, making sure you meet all safety and safeguard requirements. But if you do not yet have nuclear, the upfront investment, the costs are very, very high. So it is for each country to decide. But as you say, in order to become climate neutral, in order to stay secure, in order to stay competitive, we need all technologies.
Okay. Regarding the national climate plans, Minister has already presented the Portuguese one with very, very ambitious targets. What do you see in other national climate plans? Are they all as ambitious as the Portugal one? What do you see?
They're not all as ambitious as Portugal, unfortunately. It would be good to have more ambitious from different parts of Europe as well. We haven't received all the plans yet, so we'll see when we have all of them. We can carry out the assessment and see.
A lot of them missing?
Too many indeed. Not many, but it would be. We need them in so we can carry out the assessment and look at where does it bring it. Would it help us? Would it allow us to meet the targets we've set ourselves for 2030? And if not, how do we fill any gaps that might be there?
Minister, you said that we have ambitious targets. They are ambitious. Are they doable? Are they achievable in the time frame that we want to do it? That the country wants to do it?
I think they are. In terms of renewables, I'm convinced there is a lot of interest in reinvesting in renewables. Where we need to do a big effort to achieve is in the transport sector. Because we got delayed in the, how do you call the train, the rail, and it takes long to build. And we need a rail infrastructure, a good rail infrastructure to be ready in 2030. It's easier in the public transportation. We are doing a lot in public transportation. We are investing in the metropolitan metro in Porto, Lisbon, Coimbra. Electric buses. We just financed 300 electric buses. The electric boats across the Tagus River. That is easier. Is the rail infrastructure that I'm a bit worried. We really need to have the rail infrastructure ready for 2030, or at least a good part of it.
And you were there the last 5 years of the last commission.
You were negotiating in different sides.
Yes. So a lot of legislation produced, a lot of things then to pass on to the national laws, which is not always easy.
Too much, Dita, now I realize.
Yes, now that you are on the government side,
I need to do all the.
Yes. And what do you expect for the next 5 years? Not so much, but increasing on everything that needs to be done, or the same rhythm as the last 5 years?
I hope it will be a different rhythm. I think the first priority will be to strengthen our competitiveness, consolidate our competitiveness, and really try to lower the energy costs, the energy bills for European consumers, whether it's businesses or households. And in order to do that, we have to implement. We have a very, very good legislative framework, and thank you for the good cooperation on that.
Especially the electricity
market design. Exactly. So we need to make sure we implement that and get the benefits out of it. And the second thing we need to do is to make sure that we increase investments into the transition. You mentioned rail. That is one example of investments that make sense. Investments into grids, infrastructure, renewable energy. So we have to facilitate investments. We have to support. A lot of that will be private investments, but we need to look at what can we do with public money to de-risk and lower the cost of capital for those investments. So those are some of the key points ahead. So I think there will be less legislation, more focus on implementation, on making it happen, and on seeing the good results.
Mm-hmm. And what are the main challenges for a region that has 27 countries? One like Portugal that has a lot of renewables, another ones that still use a lot of natural gas, others that still have coal. So how do you manage energy transition in this puzzle, in this such difficult situation?
So that diversity, that coming together of 27 markets is really a huge opportunity. So the fact that we have a common electricity market can help us lower costs. It can help make sure that the electricity, wherever it's the cheapest, is the one that is sold first, so that we keep the costs down as much as possible. So if you have a low output of the French nuclear power, we saw that as well. Well, then France can import renewable energy from a neighboring countries if the interconnectors are there, just to give an example. So it's an enormous opportunity, but what we have to make sure we do is that we cooperate closely, that we coordinate, so that we can lower the overall system costs. And interconnectors, again, really is an important aspect of that, so we'll continue that work.
Minister, I know that you are very proud of the European, the reform of the European electricity market.
We were both.
Yes, you were very, very.
And Teresa Ribeira was in the council.
Yes. It would be lovely to have her here.
Yes.
It's the
3 women.
3 energy women. Yes.
The commissioner was also a woman.
Yes. What do you think that still needs to be implemented on the day-to-day of the new design of the European electricity market?
Now we have to implement the rules that we have designed. Mm-hmm. One important, and this question that you have asked to Director General, the solution is what you said, but in one word, is the internal market. Internal market is a fantastic tool that we have for many things, because if you have 450 million together now and interconnect, it gives resilience, it gives critical mass, and so you have physical to finish this internal market with the interconnectors, not only in Iberia but in other parts, and after all the other rules, for example, the CFDs and the PPAs to attract investment. Public and private, CFDs, the private investment, because as we are lowering the price of electricity, the renewables are going very low, you really need to have a system that attracts investment, and this is a possible solution. And another point that is important is the storage, the flexibility that gives you the resilience of the system that you need to apply. And the last, there is many points, but the last one that I consider important is the emergency mechanism. If there is a crisis, we don't need to wait long. We can immediately put the emergency mechanism so we can help families and companies to protect them in the past, when Russia invaded Ukraine, we didn't have legislation. You need to get together and agree.
Yes.
Now everything is clear, the conditions, what you can do. So it is a fantastic regulation.
So it's good to have the rules for something that we hope that it will
Never happen.
never
But they are
happens
there,
again.
but it's there.
Yes, yes. One last question for both of you, and returning to the initial topic of this COP29. What, in your vision, what is the best outcome that can result from this conference? And if you could give a message to the people that are deciding, that are in the plenary making this happen, what would be that message?
I hope that we are ambitious on the financing, but also on the countries that contribute, that will enlarge the number of countries. That is one point. I hope that we do something on mitigation or reinforce the COP28, or to add something, because a COP should have always something on reduction of emissions.
So money and
And
targets.
mitigation targets also. At least reinforce them to take stake of what happened 1 year ago, and see where we are and what we need to do to achieve it in 2030. And I would also have a decision on adaptation. I would say to state the importance of the adaptation and the methodology for adaptation, because it's becoming very important. If you just look around what is happening all over the world and in Europe, and the just transition, that we need to do that with people, and how the poorest country, but also inside the industrialized countries, inside Europe, how vulnerable people can be involved and helped in this transition. So it would be my key points for this COP.
And I fully share those points. I think those are really the key points for this COP29. Also, so that we keep the momentum of COP28, that we implement. It's important both in the European Union but also globally to bring the results. And then that is the preparation for COP30 next year in Belém in Brazil.
And just one last question. President von der Leyen is not coming to this COP29. It's because it's not so much important COP as the next one, or?
No, it really is important, and she really wanted to go, so I bring her regards to everyone here. But you know, today the European Parliament is finishing the process of hearings of the commissioners designate, of the executive vice presidents designate, and so that process, the interinstitutional transition,
everything happening at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much to you both. It was a great conversation, and thank you for sharing the vision on energy, because we can do a lot, but without energy, it's not possible. So thank you for you both to share your vision. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you, Dita. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you, Barbara.